It's great to see you guys here. Thanks for coming to get some information about what it's like to work as a peer advisor. Um, as director of the IS program, I work really closely with peer advisors over the course of the year, as does Professor Nakazato, who's our associate director in the IS program. And you'll have tons of encounters with a lot of other IS faculty as well. So I wanted to give you a sense of what the job entailed, and then I've invited some of our current peer advisors to join us to share their experience and their version of what the job is like as well. So at the very top level, it's important to recognize that the job, we call them peer advisors, but you actually have two jobs built into one. One is to serve as a peer advisor in a traditional sense, to mentor students, and the other is to work as a program assistant for the IS program. So you're both an employee and a peer advisor in a more voluntary traditional sense. And both of those are absolutely crucial. So I'll speak a little bit about both of those or each of those, and then open up to the other peer advisors who are here. So with regard to peer advising itself, this of course means giving mentoring or advice to other students. They could be fellow juniors or seniors, or they could be freshmen, prospective freshmen, rising sophomores, etc. So anybody who has questions about our program, we encourage them to reach out to peer advisors first. Peer advisors never replace faculty advising. All students have to meet with their faculty advisors, and faculty have a different set of imperatives and experiences and things like that. But peer advisors are really crucial because unlike us, you've taken all the different classes, and you can really give your personal experience about what it's like to be a student now. And also you're meeting with lots of other students, and you have a sense of all the questions and things like that, which help you speak directly to other students. So peer advising topics might be about applying to the IS program. It might be about selecting courses or selecting concentrations, or what you need to do to plan your course load as a minor or a major, thinking about study abroad, thinking about writing a thesis, thinking about career options or internships or fellowships, the whole experience of being a student. It could also be what it's like to be an international student here at Boston College, or to be a member of a particular group as a part of the Boston College community. So there's all sorts of mentoring and advising at different levels that come with this. And we have a training session at the beginning of each academic year called the Academic Advising Boot Camp, and where faculty and peer advisors come together, and I review all of the rules for what you need to do to complete the major, some of the trickier little quirks about the program rules, and the general guidelines of how to think about language advising and study abroad advising and all that other stuff. So you'll be trained to do that work as a peer advisor. And that's really important to note, that you won't just be thrown in there without formal training. The second part of the job is being a program assistant. And so in this sense, you'll be doing many of the things that make the IS program special, that we couldn't be the IS program without it. Putting together the newsletter is one of the most important things that happens each week. The newsletter is just an email, but it comes with many hours of prep that go into that. Any event that's happening has to be, prepared, and get a room reserved and speakers reserved and things like that before it gets put into the newsletter, for example. So peer advisors are involved in all aspects of that work. Peer advisors, usually one of the peer advisors is a leader of the Global Conversations Project. A peer advisor is frequently one of the leaders for the Global Engagement Portal. A peer advisor leads, or multiple peer advisors rotate on social media duty, publicizing events that we're hosting. And then, of course, planning those events, whether they're academic lectures or career-oriented events or alumni conversations, or more community-building events, like the beginning and end of year social, or the upcoming International Studies Olympics that's happening in a couple weeks, or smaller scale social events as well, that help build community and are things that really make the IS program really special, I think. Peer advisors typically work 4 to 6 hours a week. It depends on how many peer advisors are working at any given time. We have a fixed budget for everybody over the course of the entire year. And you're paid as an employee of the university. Usually you'd be working, like I said, 4 to 6 hours. The pay scale is whatever BC sets for undergraduates, which right now is probably around $15.50 an hour, something like that. That rises slowly over time. And there are some weeks where you'll work more than those 6 hours if you really need it, and others you might need to work less than that or take the week off because you've got a big exam or a family something or other you need to be away for. So we're flexible. We try to hire usually between 4 and 6 peer advisors, usually 4 seniors and 1 or 2 juniors. Usually we try to have the juniors abroad different semesters, although that's not always the case. And in this semester, we have both of our juniors are abroad right now in the spring. So the things that we're looking for as to who exactly ends up getting the job. Number one, I want people who are reliable, enthusiastic, people with a strong work ethic, people who want to do the work that we're doing here. This is not something anyone is forced to do, and it's really important to us. So I want people who are proactive, who are reliable, who are good communicators, and are creative, interesting folks who have a diverse set of interests and diverse backgrounds. We love people with different language skills and different study abroad backgrounds and international experiences and personal experiences of all sorts, because in your job as a peer advisor and a mentor, it's really important to represent different channels of experience here at BC, different paths of study, different interests professionally, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're looking for, an energetic, diverse team of hardworking students who want to make the IS program a place where fellow students can flourish, where we can have fun, we can engage in the cool part of what it is to be an IS major and minor, engaging with great faculty and visiting guests, be involved in these interesting programs, et cetera. You have your fingers in all of these things. And of course, you'll have the opportunity to have really close relations with a number of faculty and our terrific IS staff who work with us as well. So that's a general overview. Let the peer advisors say a few words about things that maybe they think characterize what it means to be a peer advisor, or anything else you'd like to add, and then we'll open up for questions and conversations. Sophie, you were here first, I think. So why don't you start us off?
Sure. I do the newsletter. Sophia and I do the newsletter together. So that takes up a lot of our time, but it's been fun to like always know what's going on. And sometimes you realize your peers aren't reading it, but you're like, oh, did you see that there's this cool thing happening? And try to get people excited about it. Because obviously it's our like day to day. So we're like already kind of bought in, but trying to get other people to show up and pay attention and engage in like the really cool programs that we have has also been like a big part of it, which has been really fun. Like I've gotten to know a lot of people a lot better than I did before, especially after like going abroad and everything. And so it's been really fun to make those connections and encourage people to be involved as well.
Great. Okay, Sophia.
Yeah, as Sophie just mentioned, I also spend a lot of time working on the newsletter. It's probably the thing I dedicate most of my time to. We did like a whole new refresh this year, which was like super fun to do and like to bounce ideas off of each other. And it's always like we're always having conversations about like the best way to reach out to students because we know like not everything always works for like everyone. So like we've embraced using like the social media and like being able to like just talk to people and have conversations with people. Like I have friends who know I'm a peer advisor, and so they'll ask me like, "Hey, I saw this thing that was going on. Like, what's really like what's it about? Like, can you tell me more? Like, I don't know if I want to go. I don't know if it's for me." And it's always like great to be able to be like, "Hey, well, like we're having this person come and they're super cool. They're really interested in this," or, "Oh, like we're just having a panel. It's like a casual conversation. Like you don't have to feel super stressed about like saying like something specific. Like we just want to talk." Or even just like going up to my friends and being like, "Hey, like I saw you did this really cool thing. Do you want to write a student voice? Do you have a photo from the weekend? I know you were doing this." Like everyone would love to see what we're doing. And so like it gives us so many opportunities to like engage with students and just like to be a resource, but also to like be a friend and let people know like, "Hey, I saw this. I know you like this. Like, oh, it's this economics thing. You do economics. Like, this is a cool opportunity for you. Do you like here's the link to sign up." Like, and it's just cool to be like so involved and to know like, "Hey, like I've got all these resources and I know other people would love to have them as well."
Great, thanks. Brad, do you want to add on?
Sure. I think that Professor Owens, you kind of hit the nail on the head about having kind of those two roles, both administratively and then also being kind of like a peer mentor. So on like the administrative side, I've helped out with kind of the recruiting for the new freshman class that has to apply every year. And then I've also helped with the kind of alumni career outreach sector. And then a little bit with community planning. So I haven't really gone down the whole newsletter. The two girls do a great job, so thank you guys. Um, but kind of on that side of things, like you're really able to see what's behind the program, which is really just a really neat thing because I think I took the newsletter for granted. Definitely as I was going through the program. So it's nice to be behind to see how to plan events and to actually develop a really close connection with both Professor Nakazato and Professor Owens, but also with the other professors that are in the house. So it's neat to just kind of be around to get to converse with these really high level professors who are great people and great resources. So I've really enjoyed kind of that side of it and being able to help out in that way. And then I guess on the other end of things, being a peer mentor is probably one of the coolest parts of the job. I think we each kind of came into being a peer advisor at different at like that diverse background is definitely something that I think the international studies program looks for. Like I'm a PEDS concentration, I'm a double major with international studies and economics, and I really love talking about development. So, and I have a minor in business. So a lot of things kind of swing me to one side where people who have the same issues or whether that's with course registration or they have the same interests and are kind of looking for a little guidance, are able to, book an appointment with me, come see me, and then I'm able to help them out from there. So I get a lot of double majors who are trying to, fit everything in. They're like, how did you do that? And I'm like, well, let me tell you. And I guess one of the best parts of it too is the international studies program. They give you that training at the beginning of the year, but they don't tell us what to tell you, right? It's all coming from our own perspective, which is something that I really appreciate is that we're not told to, pitch any classes. We kind of give you our honest opinion and help you out as best as we can. And I think it's a lot. I know when I was an undergrad, it was definitely or a underclassman. It was definitely a lot easier going to a peer advisor than sometimes going to a faculty member. That you have to do both. So I would say, kind of being on both ends of that role has been really neat, and I've seen kind of the benefits of doing both. So it's a great role. It's a great little team that kind of Professor Owens and Nagazawa have assembled. And yeah, so it's something cool to get involved in.
It's a huge pleasure to work with you guys as a professor and administrator. It's fun to hear because you also serve, peer advisors also serve as liaisons for us. We can ask like, are people going to do this, or is this a good idea, or what are the students saying about X or Y? So you become a voice to the faculty in addition to being a voice to the students, other students from faculty. One other thing I want to highlight, and then we'll open up for more conversation, is that a lot of the programming that happens, especially the community building events, but other programming as well, is driven by peer advisor interest. So over the years, we've had all sorts of different programs. Sometimes we'll have like one year we had small group conversations about like 6 or 7 different topics that were just peer advisors hosting in the back room with a couch and some snacks. Like, let's talk about being an international student at BC, or let's talk about stereotypes about China, or let's talk about whatever. So they'd have small group topical conversations that they hosted. Other years we've had more career-oriented conversations, and some years we have mixers with different class concentrations, and we have just a huge range of different things because of the ways that our students are interested in them. And we try to capture them on YouTube and upload them to our YouTube channel, put them onto our website, and do all kinds of other things. But a lot of what we do is driven by your interests and by your energy. And so as much as we pitch the idea of the IS program being flexible to student interests, you pick all these classes you want, et cetera. You have a lot of freedom. The same is true for peer advisors in our program. You have a lot of flexibility to do things, to have events and whatever, and we'll try to support those as much as we can. I think it's a really, I mean, I am really grateful for all the work that peer advisors put in. I'd like to think it's also a fun job in the sense that you're interacting, you're building up a program that you're committed to make it the kind of thing you want it to be, which is a program that has real soul to it and not just a bunch of classes. And that's always been my interest as director, to have this be something bigger than just a collection of classes. And with the help and leadership of the peer advisors, I think that is the case. And that's why I think it's such a cool job. So let's open up for questions or conversations for people who, especially Sophia, Patrick, and Delphine.
I kind of had a question about the more logistics side of things, but
Yeah.
you mentioned how like in the weekly hours you would expect to work like 4 to 6 hours, and I was just wondering like in the firsthand experience of like the peer advisors, like were you able to find yourself able to balance like being an IS peer advisor with like other club commitments as well as academics?
Yeah, I can definitely say that I've been able to balance it. It's definitely like some weeks I'm doing more work and other work. Like maybe I have a big commitment coming up, like a couple weekends ago, I had a conference. And so I wasn't really doing any of like the newsletter work over the weekend. But like other weeks I know Sophie's been away and she's been doing things. And so I did some of the newsletter work over the weekend. And a big part of it is just being able to like communicate and say like, hey, I'm not going to be here doing this. I'm doing like this club event, or I have this class at this time. Can someone else do this? And so it's definitely like it's definitely like a good amount of hours to like balance with classwork and other outside commitments. It's just I think it boils down to communication and just letting people know like this time doesn't work for me, or I'm really busy this week. Can someone else pick this up? Like I'd really appreciate it. And so I found that like in my experience at the very least, like peer advising does like fit into the schedule and it can be like pretty easily balanced.
One thing I'll add is that we have an hour-long staff meeting each week for everybody, where we convene and make plans for who's working on what project. You do come into the office for several of those 6 hours, usually maybe 4 of them. It depends on who's working on what, but because you have open hours where students can walk in and ask questions. So between the staff meeting, which is a paid hour, and the hours that you do in-person advising, and sometimes you're working together with other peer advisors on a project, brainstorming about something or working on publicity or planning or whatever. And those are hours in the office as well. But you are also able to do some of the peer advising via Zoom if you prefer. And some of the other work sometimes is done remotely. The newsletter, for example, can be done anywhere. But we want you to be in the office for a good portion of those hours, because you're also helping us do projects around the office, and it's a convenient place to have people come here as well. So I just want to highlight the staff meeting though too. Anyone else want to pitch in on balancing the time?
Can because of the hours that he was speaking about, like when we're in the Connolly house, that's when I get most of the newsletter done. And Sophia and I overlap some hours to collaborate on that and just have a better sense of like what is going to be left at the end of the week. Because we do maybe 30 minutes, like on a weekend, just quick edits. It's nothing huge. So I usually the like 4 hours in the office are like every week very consistent. And then as Sophia was saying, kind of on a weekly basis, it might be a little bit more, might be a little not less really, but sometimes we have more events, or whenever you're doing like the course listing, that just takes up a little bit of extra time. But that's not every week. And then I also am a research assistant for Professor Erickson. So I balance that with it, and then courses and clubs. So it's very doable. And like Sophia was saying, communication is key. Just like these are the hours I really can work. And then if you have something going on and you just let everyone know, it's not a big deal. Everyone's willing to pull their weight, and it'll look different every week. But overall, it's been consistent but also flexible, which I've really appreciated.
Other questions?
I was going to add to that. It is very flexible in the sense that you are able to kind of move around, but I would say the big thing is just being proactive and being a good communicator about that. Like I had interviews in the fall, and if those would come up, I wouldn't be able to go to my office hours, but I would just let people know ahead of time, and then it was fine. It's you have enough people, and you have a good support system around you. And then I guess the only other thing was that does come in ebbs and flows sometimes. So with the course listing, like Sophie was saying, it definitely picks up and you put in a lot more hours, kind of in those weeks, but other weeks, it'll be kind of like less or more like a usual schedule.
Good. Any other questions?
Sorry. Outside of like kind of scheduling and that kind of conflict, what do you think has kind of been the most difficult aspect of the job, if anything? Just kind of the flip side.
Hmm?
What I've been most frustrated with is getting people to show up. Like we're really excited about what we're doing. We put a lot of work into this newsletter. Um, and then people don't engage or they don't show up. And you can't make people do that, but we're really like, it feels frustrating when you put a lot of time in and a lot of effort and you're excited and then you have to cancel an event because you just didn't get RSVPs, or like you talk to someone and they're like, oh, I didn't know about that. And you're like, well, it's in the, like, we sent out for 3 weeks. Like you had, like, could have read it once. That's been really frustrating for me. Maybe that's newsletter specific, but I don't think it is, because I know like when Brad is planning career events or trying to recruit, we stood at a table like all day on a Thursday at Mac and just got like BC look away or ignored, or just it gets frustrating to get people to engage when you're excited about something or you feel really good about it, but just not what the students are interested in. And you know, we are students, so you would think we had a good idea, but sometimes it's still hard to get people to like pay attention. And so for me, that's been the biggest frustration, is like you put in a lot of work, and it doesn't always get appreciated by the student body who you feel like you're doing it for and with. So for me, that's been the hardest part.
Going off of that, I totally agree. That day in Mac was tough, getting BC look away for a couple hours straight. But yeah, it's the student participation is something that we've been trying to get all year. And when we do fun events that we think the student body will like, we do put a lot of time and effort into it, whether that's booking a room, talking with people who's coming to speak, getting teachers to show up, maybe getting food for the event, stuff like that, all in the planning, and then to have it, kind of crash last second, it is a little frustrating. Like we understand people are busy, but we do kind of put it down on social media channels as best as we can and put in the newsletter for a couple weeks in advance to let people have that notice. So I'd say that's the most like difficult part of the job, is when you're really building something up and you're excited because you think this will benefit other people, and then it ends up there's not a whole lot of engagement there, but it's all part of the job. So
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I know this is something Sophie and I in particular struggle with, but for the newsletter every week we try and get like a student voice, and I love reading the student voices. I think they're great. Like I've been making sure we're like trying to post about every single one of them on our Instagram story, and it can just be a little disheartening when no one wants to share their voice, which obviously it's a time commitment and it's effort put in. I know I get a lot out of what people are saying about our program, about their experiences. And in particular, it can be like really disheartening if you like go up to someone and they're like, yeah, I'll write something for you. And then like last minute, they're like, oh no, like that's not happening. And then also just being like, oh, like, but I know you've done this really cool thing. Can you please like tell us about it? And just repetitively, people are like, well, like, I don't know, like maybe I'll get to it. It can be a little disheartening to see like people just not wanting to engage in the way like you want to engage. And you can put so much effort into creating like an event or making sure like the newsletter looks great. And I'll be like, hey, like, does somebody want to send a student voice to like my friends or whatever? I'll be like, hey, like I know you guys just did this cool thing. And they'll be like, what's that? And it can just be a little disheartening to be like, oh, well, like it's been in the newsletter since we've been in the IS program. Like it's not a new thing, but here's what it is. Like, here's the link if you want to fill out a form. All it is like a couple paragraphs, like of reflection, or a like you can even like talk to us, like we'll interview you. Do you have a photo? Like we'll do a postcard, and just like people not putting the effort to scroll all the way to the bottom of the newsletter to see the postcard. So just like things like that where like you can put a lot of effort in, you can be really excited about something, you can really love the idea of a student voice and people sharing their like reflections and their experiences, and then people just like not wanting to put in that effort. I mean, everyone's busy, like we understand. Um, but it can just be a little disheartening.
Occupational hazard of being a leader is the heartbreak that comes from putting in your time and not feeling like it's fully appreciated. This can happen in classrooms as well, of course. Yeah, that's true. It's a good question, Patrick, for sure. I think you're hearing a common theme, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they're saying that that's what every event is like, but rather that it's disheartening when you do have some events and that's like that. And we work to try to mitigate that and to try to plan ahead and to do small scale events where we don't expect 50 people or 100 people to show up, but to have a lunch with 15 people is terrific for those 15 people who are learning about topic X or Y or want to be together. Some things are bigger though and require more energy and effort. So, other questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a logistical question. I know I came in a few minutes late, so I hope I don't make you repeat yourself. But how exactly are the roles between peer advisors divided up?
We have a death match at the beginning of the semester where people fight each other for the no. We when we get our crew together, we figure out what people are interested in and let you guys decide with my assistance. You know, there's at some point there may be multiple people who want to do something, and we talk about maybe flipping semesters or whatever. It's very much a collaborative effort to say who's interested in this kind of work. We try to have like social media spread out among everybody so that people can lend different voices to it and it doesn't feel like a burden. The newsletter, we found that it's a little more streamlined when a pair of people do it because they get really good at it and they're quick. A pair makes it not feel like such a burden for one person. But sometimes we flip that from semester to semester as well. So it's very much a collaborative thing. You tell us what you are really interested in or excited about. I'll give you a list of all the kinds of things we've been doing, and we'll have, we usually have a peer advisor who comes back from their junior year and repeats as a senior, and they can tell you about what the experience was like, the things that worked or didn't work and what they'd like to do and things like that. So it's very collaborative, and we want you all to do the thing that you think is important. Like Brad mentioned, one of his interests was in thinking about career and alumni relations. And as an econ major and someone who works with folks in CSOM also, he had visibility into different ways of going about this than some of the Morrissey College folks usually do. And so we've been talking about how we might improve the way we present information or how we communicate with alumni and what kind of events we do and things like that. So we want you to bring experiences you've had from other places and help, enliven our conversations and think in a new way within the constraints that we have, which of course we have some financial constraints and time constraints and constraints about things that, like, if we want to have a bonfire in the backyard, the university usually says no, things like that. So there's some limits to what we can do, but the fun part is working together to see what you're excited about and then provide resources to do that, so that things are largely student driven. That's one of the things that makes it special. Hi, Hannah, welcome. Any other questions or logistical or big picture questions? I'll put in the chat a link to the description of the position, which is it's in a weird place on our website right now, under people, because that's where we put job postings. There's a subset for faculty and a subset for students, and that's where the peer advisor job description is. but also the application. The application is simply writing a cover letter in your CV. Just like you would for some other position. There's no major, no essays or something like that. So it shouldn't take you long. And a cover letter is simply telling us why you want to be a peer advisor. And then we'll gather those and reach out to folks in the week or two after that to have interviews and things like that. So ideally we'll have the positions confirmed by the time exams happen, so you can plan your fall semester with other club leadership and work activities and things like that. Okay. Well, thank you guys for taking